Hey guys, Greg here, Bone Tactical. I'm often asked what it's like to live in a narco war zone or an area where there's a lot of drug traffickers, and in this particular case, it's drug traffickers that are fighting against gangsters, mareros as they're called down here, and it's particularly the MS-13 gang that you guys probably have heard about, almost definitely have heard about. I'm going to talk specifically today for another installment of the Cigar Stories with Mr. Bone about the Narco Wars. And you guys have probably seen the Sicario movie series, or you've seen Narcos on Netflix, and you may have like a small idea of kind of what it's like. And most of those shows were bygone eras, and it's changed a whole lot. So I'll share with you today boots on the ground, so to speak, being in the middle of it, and especially what it's like being a known person during all of this. So just a few stories to get started, let you know kind of what's been going on. Here at this facility that I'm building, I'm literally surrounded in the thick of it. For those that don't know, I did a lot of what we would call clandestine work, counter-espionage, a little bit of corporate espionage, personal protection work, all through Central America, Latin America, a lot focused on Guatemala and Honduras, and really made some big contacts up through government and everything like that, which has helped a lot to get where I'm at now. But I've also made myself a player in a game at a scale that the others in this area who have the type of level of business proficiency are in some way tied almost completely to the narco trade. So it's put a spotlight on me, and it's also made me be able to get in touch with and know on a personal basis all of the big name players. And that's why I'm going to be able to share these stories with you. Now, just working down here in Latin America, Central America, in the last 5 years, I would say the majority of the people that I've worked with or known, specifically for the security tasks and some of the more what I would consider or what we would call clandestine operations, most of those people are no longer with us. So a lot of this information that I can share now is because these people aren't around to be pointed out or pointed at or have repercussions from this conversation that I'm going to have right now. In fact, in the past several months, right over here and right over here, two pretty crazy stories. The two biggest big bosses were recently killed. And I'll tell you exactly what happened on both of those stories, how that happened in both occasions. And then that was the narco bosses. And then as a repercussion, right over there, the jefa, or the boss of the MS-13 for this whole area, was killed as a repercussion to the narco killings. Believe it or not, the head of the MS-13 for this whole area was a female, which is rare, but in this particular area has been starting to become more prevalent, and we'll talk about that and why. Let's get right into the stories you guys want to hear about. So what do you want to hear first? Do you want to hear about the two narco bosses that were recently killed? Do you want to hear about the repercussions of the head of the MS-13 gang being killed? Do you want to hear about how it's affecting me, how it's affecting the area, what it's like to walk in the streets, the danger level, what I have to do for security? Well, let's start with a timeline. Up until 2018, I was doing bone tactical and private security, corporate espionage, counter-espionage, executive protection, all that type of stuff. The bone tactical was mainly that up until about 2018. 2019, 20 started the change. I think 22 was buying this property and building these installations, and we're up until that point now still building. Of course, it's a massive, massive, massive project at this point. Now, moving here sandwiched me between the big players of the game. Just happened to be where I got the property. The property I got through help from the pastor at the church where we do all the outreach programs, we recently built a school for children, and you know, you guys know that the majority of the proceeds, a huge portion of the proceeds from all this goes to give young children who don't have a chance at education, to give them that chance. So that being aside, moving here put us in a different area with different players, and I got to know a little bit the big bosses, two of the biggest narco bosses, let's just say it. I mean, and it even, I don't talk about stuff like this, so it even feels a little off. Could probably still be dangerous to talk about, even though they've all been killed recently. But I'm not going to name any names, of course, and we'll just talk a little bit of generalities. But anyway, there's a house right over there, full Pablo Escobar style. Big lake out back with crocodiles and alligators. There's the driveway. You go in, you enter the driveway, and there's these columns that were made from these trees, imported from another Central American country, that each tree had to have a double wide tractor trailer for each column, each tree column, bringing it in, because they're like 14 feet diameter. These massive, it's like a California redwood looking tree. I don't even know what the name of the species of tree is, because I didn't do a lot of conversing with those people. I wanted to have the most limited contacts I could. It was like, hey, how you doing? You know, we'd see each other. We would know that we were each what they would consider to be successful business people of the community, and so we would see each other in passing. Well, that particular gentleman was getting to the point of becoming retired. He ran the whole area, just super wealthy. Very, 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 very rarely did he leave these past few years his compound. Had a very intense compound, lots of armed guards with AK-47s everywhere. Very rarely did he leave his compound. New Year's Eve, he was killed. He had just gone to the agency, car agency, to get a new, these guys would go get to the dealership, they call it the agency in Spanish. They went to the dealership to get, just take out a new car. They do this regularly. They would go get new cars regularly. Well, of course, normally he goes around in his armored vehicle, but he went to get a new car. So he went to get his new car. And classic motorcycle, Columbia-esque 80s hit, which is what they do here still to this day. A couple guys driving dirt bikes, a couple guys on the back with M16s, Colt Commandos, which they're just everywhere down here. A guy stopped at a little convenience store to get something on his way home. The dirt bikes surrounded him, opened fire. He was able to drive a little bit, almost got away, hit a concrete barrier of a ditch, a little drainage ditch, a culvert. Somebody's driveway had a concrete barrier. He hit that on his way trying to escape. They surrounded his vehicle and unloaded at point blank range with M16s. That's what they do down here is they use assault rifles at point blank range because they don't have an extreme level of training to use them from a distance. There's almost no precision rifle skills down here, so just kind of interesting subject. Somebody with a precision rifle skill, I was very quickly able to make myself highly set apart, because being able to shoot extreme distances, especially over 1,000 meters, is unheard of down here. And somebody that can do that is people don't even realize it can be done here, really. So highly valuable, but they don't do it like that. That's how they do it. He was taken out. Now, a lot of this is going to sound like inside information that I'm sharing with you, but I'm just going to say that I don't have any inside connections with this. And the information that I do have, it's just because, like I say, I'm now a pillar of the community. I employ so many people here, and I do so much outreach program that word just gets to me. And although I don't have any direct involvement with these people, I do know all of the details. In fact, a considerable amount more information than even the police would know in this case, which is just interesting, goes to show the dynamic down here. But so his cell phone was revised at that point. He had had communication with the boss of the MS-13 gang. The last series of text messages and calls that he had gotten were asking him where he was at and what time he was going to be back, and it was the boss of the MS-13 gang. Didn't take much to lead from point A to point B for the assumption to be made that that woman, who is the head of the entire MS-13 gang, and of course, you know, they always were butting heads for control. Mainly in the past few years, it had only been the Narcos had solid power, and then the MS-13 gang guys would ask for permission to do what they wanted to do. During the reign of Juan Orlando Hernandez as president, the Narcos had total control because he was a narco president. He's now in a prison in the United States, for those that don't know. But yeah, so there's a new president now, and she took out all of his stuff. People took him out of power. She even took the police force and put them in charge of gang activity when it was the military that was in charge of gang activity before that. So the police had they started blank with a blank slate, and the police force is completely corrupt, whereas the military is not. And so then the gangs in the past few years just exploded out of control in this country and here in Honduras. And in the past year, or however long, it's been a little over a year, I guess 2 years now, that she's been in power, this new president, and the gangs just took over that quickly. They were able to buy out the police immediately because the police started with a blank slate. The military was told to stop policing the gangs, and the military had wiped out the gangs. There was almost no gang activity when she became president. So just interesting stuff. Anyway, so the gang here had been getting stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger, up to the point where I was having some issues myself with the gangs, because one of my ex-employees was a young man who had been working with me for like 6 years. I took him off the street, and his aunt happened to be this lady, the head of everything. And he didn't want to have anything to do with her when he first started working with me, because he didn't want to be in that life. And he was living on the street. Like I said, I took him out of the gutter and gave him a lot of opportunity, got him a place to stay, furnished his apartment, and started teaching him how to make knives. He worked for me for about 5 years before he had one foot in the gang activity and one foot out, and I just had to tell him one day, you got to make a choice. You got to do the right thing, or you can't work for me anymore. He chose to go into the gang activity, and then that put a target on us here, because he felt like he wanted to start trying to extort us. Since he knew me and he worked for me, they wanted to charge their war tax, is what they call it. And that's actually the gang's main source of local income, is extortion. They charge all of the local people war tax or protection. Of course, I'm not paying protection, so I told him, you got a couple options here. Option A is you kill me. Option 2 is you don't get anything and you leave me alone. But either way, you don't get anything. So, there was a high tension times. We had to be on the lookout. We had to, really be on high alert with security. I'll talk a little bit about that. I always carry a firearm with me because of stuff like that. I do believe highly that as a Christian man, no weapon formed against me will prosper. What I do daily and what happens to me is part of God's plan. I'm protected as long as I'm in line with what God wants me to do. So that's how I can be safe here. Because there's nobody that could come here and do the things that I've done. They sound so incredible and unbelievable and impossible, because they are, and I can only say that I've done these things because God wanted me to get to the point where I'm here now and able to share my testimony. But continuing on about that, this was the middle event, right? The biggest narco being killed. This was the middle event, which the MS-13 coming up in power had led to this, and now we have the Narcos contacts being able to ascertain that it was the gang based off the cell phone that had him taken out. Previously to this, his former underling, now separate narco boss, remember I said the two big narco bosses were killed. This big top dog's former underling, now apart as his own separate major narco boss. Still friends, just not working one under the other anymore. Remember, I told you the really big guy was basically retired or trying to retire, kind of just calling his shots from his house. So the guy that had worked for him previously set out and said, you know, I want to take over where you left off. I want to be boots on the ground, do all this. He was killed in a very different way. Crazy way. And this happened right before the big boss got killed. And I think the underboss, or the smaller narco boss getting killed, was what gave the gangs courage to take out the big boss, now that he didn't have his soldier running things. Now, this area was very, very, very safe for two reasons. One, there's a military battalion not far from here, which kind of is more of a mental thing. It helps a little bit. But the biggest reason was these two big narco bosses would publish a list every Saturday of anybody that was a thief or a gangbanger that was outside of the lines, up to the point where anybody that was just a nuisance to the community, small petty thievery, any kind of stuff that wasn't right with them, didn't sit right with them. And it was the cleanup squad. They'd go out every Saturday and they'd kill these people. So every single Saturday, anybody who was a problem here would be eliminated immediately, because the gangs down here and the small-time petty violence is a plague. It really is. So it was a very safe area, because anybody trying to come from the bigger cities and setting up shop was just killed immediately. And every Saturday they would keep their sicarios, or their hitmen, in practice by sending out these hit squads every Saturday and taking out the garbage, right? Well, now it's been over a year and these two guys are dead, and just, it is a tough environment now. Very, very, very dangerous. There's threat of violence everywhere. And that's what happens when there's a struggle for power. So we've got the main man getting killed. What led up to that was the other boss getting killed. Now, let me tell you, this is the craziest story of all. This is nuts. So here we are. There's a mountain behind me. There's a small town in front of me. Both of these narcos basically have giant sprawling haciendas, one there and one there, and then mine here, and then you have the mountain and then the town on the other side of the haciendas. So one day, the police are always randomly setting up, military randomly setting up roadblocks for whatever reason. But these guys are the big dogs. They have total power. We've already discussed that Narco number one's dead. This is before Narco number one was killed, but very, very briefly, like 1 month before. Now Narco number two is running things all over the place. A couple of his workers are going by right here on this road right here. But the police had decided to set up a checkpoint that day. So they get stopped and they're riding on their dirt bikes, which is the common transportation for workers here. And they don't have helmets, which is, nobody wears a helmet here in the mountains, even though the law says you have to. So the police stopped them and said, hey, you guys don't have helmets on. And they said, do you know who we are? And the cop said, I don't care who you are, you gotta have a helmet on. He said, do you know who we work for? And the cop said, I don't care who you work for, you gotta have a helmet on. Well, it came to a clash. More workers came, they started cussing out the cops, beating down the cops, whatever, verbally abusing the cops. The cops were gonna arrest these guys because of this, so then they had obviously called the narco boss, boots on the ground guy. He comes down there and he says, hey, you know who I am. These guys are good, get the heck out of here. And the cop says, I'm placing you under arrest, you gotta come down to the station. He said, what? You can't do that to me, You're going to be dead by tomorrow. You know, this is, you won't make it through the end of the day. He said, this is unheard of. I run this whole area. Call your boss. Said to the cop, whatever. Anyway, he gets in the car. The cop says, get in the car with me. We're going to the station. The narco guy says, all right, this is going to be your worst day of your life. They go to the station, or they're on their way to the station, and one of the workers calls the narco boss's son. So they come loaded out, loaded for bear, bunch of pickup trucks with guys with AK-47s in the back, block off the road where the narco is in the car. They pull him out of the car. By this time they had made it down to the center of the town where they finally caught up with him. And so they're down in town square basically by this time, when the guys with the AK-47s catch up and everything. And the cop gets out of the car, and they're all talking, right? They're all talking. They're like, hey, man, this is not going to go well. Da, 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 da. They give us the guy back. He's like, I'm just going to take him in, and we'll let the law handle it. We're going to do it the right way, da, 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 da. And then they're just belittling this guy, finger in the face, everything like that. This cop apparently has just had enough. He doesn't care who the boss is. He doesn't value his life. Now, just to let you know what the police force is like down here, these cops, 99% of them, the only thing that they do is they ask you for a bribe or a tip. So like if you get pulled over and if I have a body in the back of my truck, I might have to give him $100. You know what I mean? Because he had to do some work that day. He caught me. They don't really get involved, especially if you're a big boss or something like that. They know that there's nothing they can do, because if they do anything, they know that their whole families will get wiped out like that, right? So there's really no police control. This cop was just a crazy, rogue, tough guy, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, the cop had had enough, wasn't taking it. The cop pulls his revolver out, puts it in the narco's face, and blows the guy's head off right there in town square. So the biggest number 2 guy, but in his own right, these 2 guys were the heads of everything all around here. Big narco bosses, legendary level narco bosses. Gets his brains blown out in town square a couple months ago by a street cop who just had a bad day, I suppose. Now that changes the dynamic for everything. You know, everybody sees it. It's on, everybody's filming, taking pictures. It's in town square. So that's probably what gave the gangs, that and the fact that now the gangs are taking back power because the military is no longer against the gangs. That's probably what gave the gangs the courage to take out the only remaining big boss narco, who was the guy that got mowed down in the car, taking the car from the dealership. So now we've got the 2 big narcos are dead. The cleanup crew's dead. Obviously, crazy opening for anybody that wants to come here and set up shop and do any kind of damage, or the gangs are going to spiral out of control, of course, right? Well, they check that guy's cell phone. The second guy that got killed, they check his cell phone. The big narco boss. His companions see, and his associates see in his cell phone that he had talked, the last person he talked with, it looked like a setup from the head boss of the gang, this lady. So they call, now, their forces are, kind of semi-scattered, and they call for reinforcements from a neighboring country here. And they bring in the big dogs, right? Of course, this is an international crime syndicate here. We're talking about narco trafficking, drug trafficking. So all of these guys come across the border from Guatemala heavily kitted out, and they install themselves in these facilities of the formerly dead narcos, and now it's full-on scale war between the gangs. A couple days after the big narco was killed, the lady that's the head of the MS-13, she's the only lady who has permission to sell drugs in this area, right? They don't charge extortion. They don't do any of the other gang stuff. She has permission from the narcos to have her own MS-13 gang and to sell drugs locally. The big narcos, they traffic. They don't do low-level gangbanger stuff. Well, the gangbangers, that's really their only source of income. They have a few corner stores, convenience stores, and bars where they set up, and they're the only people that are allowed to sell drugs, the only people that do sell drugs here. So, she's in one of her bars, corner stores, convenience stores, just, hanging out, doing her thing with her pistoleros, her gunmen, and in come all of these guys from across the border with their a hit squad, Guatemalan hit squad, and they drug her out in the street and lined them all up against the wall in front of this, right there in town center at the bar she works, sells her drugs out of. And they're all crying and screaming and begging for their lives. And, they lined them up and gunned them down with AK-47s. Interesting thing about AK-47s here in this country is that while they're a lot more common used in Guatemala, here it's only the real hardcore guys that use them, because they're illegal for everyone. You know, you can have an M16 and get it legalized if you're a really, really big player in the game. You can get that done. Takes a lot of work, but you can get it done. But nobody can have an AK-47. Just seeing it, it identifies you immediately as a high-level criminal. So these guys, you know, sprayed right there in the street all these people down with AKs, lined them up, killed them all. And then now we're in the situation where the head of all of the powerful crime people in a period of 3 months are all dead. The heads of all of the criminal organizations in my little tiny area, and that hardly doesn't ever happen anywhere. So the last 2 years has been absolutely chaotic for me. And this area went from the safest place in Honduras to the most dangerous place in Honduras, overnight. If you guys want to know more of what I do for my personal security, what I've had to do, what I've had to encounter, what we've had to fight against here to protect this facility, you guys want to know what I carry basically an active shooter kit at all times, or I carry, you know, firearm as well, ammunition, all that kind of stuff. If you guys want to know more about my carry stuff, my personal security plan, I will do another cigar stories video, thinking about maybe, you know, lining some stuff up on a table up here next weekend maybe, and talking about that. So let me know, questions and comments below, what you guys want to know more of. There's so many more stories that can be told. This is just kind of the most recent happening. And then that's kind of the gist of how it works. If you guys want to know, I could talk about more how the gangs do their extortion process, and, you know, more on a personal level of what it's like to be an American here, and you know, how far the dollar goes, you know, what it's like to build to invest $1 million in a third world country as an American with you know, that came here not speaking the language, with nothing. A lot of cool stories to be told, but this channel basically goes off of me trying to help with my information, my knowledge, help those of you out there be more prepared, learn from the mistakes I made, not have to make the same mistakes I made, stuff like that. And then the way that this all works is, if these videos do well, and then I get the comments saying what you guys want to see more of, that's what helps, because that's how I can make a better impact. That's how I can be the change I want to see in the world, make the world a better place, all that kind of stuff. Got to have success with this in order to keep it going. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep selling the world's most effective edged weapons and self-defense tools, non-permissive environment gear, awesome, hardcore, combat-proven stuff, and focus more on the production here, because I really do enjoy that as well. I think the knowledge is crucial paired with the equipment. So the way that we can keep these videos coming is questions and comments. Comment, like, share with your friends. We got to get the views up. We got to get the algorithm feeding this stuff, so that I can keep sharing this type of stuff if you like it. If you don't like it, then don't comment, don't share, don't subscribe to my channel, none of that. That way I'll know that I'm not going to make any more of these videos, because there's really no point. Let me know, and we'll see how this one does, to see if we do more of these cigar stories with Mr. Bone. This is in direct response to some viewers wanting it, so let's see if it's how many of you guys really want these kind of videos. Thanks for watching. Bone out.